Hello there, welcome back to RC Diaries. It's been about 4 months, and before I get any further, I apologise if you hear a racket outside. There are people slamming van doors and setting off dogs. Anyway, we're going to talk about these body shells. Now, 4 months ago, I did an update. I'm going to give you a brief overview. I'm not going to go into the full thing. You can watch that video if you like. Basically, I got this body shell, the Bitty Design Agata. It's clearly a Lamborghini. Previously, I was using this, the Camtech Porsche 911 GT3R. Now, this was painted by Shark Fat, and it's gorgeous. I absolutely love it. This is how I started my GT12 racing, I guess, comeback, because it's been 17 years since I raced. I raced touring cars, and I came into racing again with GT12. Anyway, I won't go on too much about the past because you've heard it all. The point is, I got to a point where I was competing for and sometimes winning B finals, but I never legitimately got into an A final yet, because the only A finals I did get into were on nights where the LMP12 class was running, and then therefore all the top guys were running their LMP12 cars, so there was less of them in the GT12 class, so getting into the A final then doesn't really count. I wanted a legitimate A final qualification, you know, with the qualifying heats. I wanted to get myself into the A final legitimately. It hadn't happened. I got to the point with this, running this shell, which I love the way it looks, it's gorgeous. I got to a point where I wasn't finding any more performance. I'd hit my limit. Most of the time I found the back end really loose. It was very, very drifty. Somebody actually jokingly asked if I'd put drift tires on the back of it because it was just sliding around a lot. And if I'd give it more rear end, balance the setup towards the rear, try and stabilize the back end, I lost steering in the front. People were saying for a while, several weeks, that the problem was my body shell. Okay, because again, I'm not going to go too much detail. I did that in the previous video. Realistic looking shells that are based on real cars don't have the same R&D in them as racing body shells with proper downforce. This is just made to look like a 911. These two are made to produce downforce and performance for an RC car. That's the bottom line. They were saying the Porsche is the weak point, doesn't produce enough downforce. Okay, fair enough. So I got one of these, reluctantly. I didn't want to move away from my Porsche, but I did. Got this. And this was the update that you saw. This was the last thing. We're going to try this out. And I was really looking forward to it because this is a far, far more effective body shell than this one is. And it should produce more steering and more downforce and more rear grip and just be better overall. Now, that didn't happen. The car was awful. It was so much worse than it was beforehand. And nobody could really work out why, because it was evil. It was utterly evil. You know those cheap plastic tires that come with cheap RC drift cars, which rather than actual rubber tires, they've just got plastic on the back usually, and they just, you know, it felt like someone put them on all four and then for good measure added grease to them, greased them up. The car was constantly trying to swap ends. It wouldn't track straight. It was all over the place. It was impossible to drive. Now, coincidentally, at the same time, because you go, oh, just go back to that shell then. At the same time, I changed how I operated with the tires, the wheels and tires, because I was killing wheels and tires so quickly. I was using a full set of 4 in maybe 2 or 3 weeks and they were gone. Utterly killing them. The reason being is I was using the same set of wheels and tires every race. Now you add tire additive before each race, and the tire additive softens it. Some people call it a softener. It softens the foam. The problem is the foams wear out exponentially more with each race if you do not give them a break in between. So all the top guys were running a set in one race, changing them over, giving them a chance to rest, running a different set in race 2, going back to the original one in race 3, and then going back to the second one in race 4. So that one, that one, that one, that one. And in between, you were giving the tires a chance to recover. And actually, it's exponentially improved. So even though you're using twice the tires, you maybe gain 4 times the tire life, if that makes sense. So that's what they also said. It was more consistent to run one set then another set, and because the foam wasn't degrading because of the amount of time it spent basked in this softener, this additive. Anyway, So I did that at the same time. So at the same time I put this on was the same time I started using 2 sets of tyres. And the car was undrivable. It was horrific. I got some of the top guys to watch it to see if they could figure out what was going on, and they couldn't put their finger on it. They said the car looks terrible. It wouldn't track straight. It was all over the place. It was trying to swap ends. It was awful. So I got some advice to try and move to a more conservative, easy driving setup, and it wouldn't help. It's just, I couldn't notice any difference. It was still just as evil. Somebody lent me a different body shell just in case this body shell was having some sort of aerodynamic quirk. No different. So, as a result of that, very quickly, I only ran this for 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, I don't know. I think it was 2 weeks. It's kind of horrible. I mean, it was a beautiful looking shell when I finished, but it's all beaten up. There's paint sort of shattered off the back of it as it's had an impact and bent inwards. There's sort of creases in it. It hasn't cracked all the way through, but there's blisters in it. It got really naff. You'll notice this one is also missing a lot of paint in the front. I was recommended this, the Fat Bodies GTM, because Betty Design claim this is very neutral. This doesn't upset the setup. It doesn't shift it front or back. It just gives you nice downforce overall. Fair enough. But no one else in the club uses one of these, so no one else in the club could verify that. People do use this because the club sells this, and they use various cars. But if the top guys find that the setup's getting a little bit too twitchy or whatever, a lot of them go back to this because it's very neutral, and they could verify that. They could say, yes, this car is very neutral. So I got this, the Fat Bodies GTM, quite clearly based on the McLaren. Didn't want it. Don't think the McLaren road cars are particularly good looking. Prefer Lamborghinis, but you know, that's fine. I wanted to get it sorted. They also suggested that my steel chassis was tweaked because it is prone to it. I'd replaced it once before, you know, and it might have been. I used a steel rule and it might have been tweaked just a little bit on the corner. So they said, look, go to the carbon one. The carbon one's way less prone to tweaking, as you can see with the carbon one fitted now. I meant that you had to get the same conversion kit again. I had to buy it again because the conversion kit, although they look almost identical, the conversion kit for the steel one is different from the conversion kit for the carbon one. It's a top deck conversion kit. Adds essentially 2 little top decks along the sides to make the chassis more rigid. So I did that. Fit this new body shell, fit my new chassis. There's dogs barking outside, and it didn't work. It didn't work. Okay, it was better with the carbon chassis because I do think the steel one was slightly tweaked. It was better briefly for the first maybe couple of minutes in a race, and then it was honestly like flicking a switch. All of a sudden, the car went from good to that again, utterly evil, and it was bizarre. It was bizarre to look at. Even people were going, "What the heck happened there?" Because it would be on like so. At some points, I did get it properly, nicely handling. It was on rails basically. Very easy to drive, very predictable. And then like a switch, it was like somebody had spontaneously put those greasy plastic drift tires on it, and it just was all over the shop, and I would drop right to the back of every race. And some of the races I was leading comfortably by a couple of laps, and I would drop all the way to the back, and I couldn't work it out. It was horrific. Nobody could work it out. And we went even more conservative with the setup, and it just wasn't happening. Goodness knows what was going on. But then somebody gave me a little bit of advice on tire prep. I had been drying, I don't know where it is, an old cloth, an old dishcloth or something. I'd been drying my tires with an old dishcloth, and it worked perfectly fine with this body shell, not a problem. When I was using one set all night. As soon as I moved over, using the same dishcloth, the car was evil. I should have been using kitchen roll, very absorbent kitchen roll. I also didn't, although it's a good thing I wasn't using one set of, stop barking, you hear that? It's a good thing I didn't use one set of tires all night anymore, because it's a good thing that I didn't have the tires basked and bathed in the additive all the time. That's a good thing. What isn't a good thing is I didn't adjust my my soak period accordingly. I didn't adjust that. I just did the same amount as I did before. And it just turns out to be not enough. I wasn't putting the additive on long enough. Didn't matter when they were getting used constantly because they were always bathed in it. This time I wasn't doing it long enough. Just had to take a quick break there while that dog shut up. Right. It was the tyre prep. It cost me 2 body shells, 2 chassis, several sets of tyres, but I finally worked it out. Tyre prep was wrong. It just wasn't working. I could get it working for half a race, 2 minutes maybe, and then for the rest of it, just forget about it. It was nonsense. It just didn't work. I needed to give them a longer soak time to really saturate the foams, and then you've got to thoroughly dry off the excess, thoroughly. My cloth that I was using wasn't doing that. I needed to use really absorbent kitchen roll, which is what I now use. It makes all the difference. The reason being is you've got any excess liquid, excess additive, as the tire spins fast, the centrifugal force forces that liquid to the surface all around, so it expands from the middle outwards, and it coats the outside of your tires, and therefore you got liquid on your tires, and it slides all over the place. What you have to do is saturate them and then dry them off thoroughly before the race, thoroughly, even 10 minutes before, let it air dry to make sure there's nothing. And then I had the car running right, and I could go back to a proper setup, not that ultra conservative setup I had to try and cam it down essentially. So that's what I've done. And with this Bodyshell, there have been races where it's utterly on rails. And on the 25th of November, I got into the A final for the first time, legitimately. I was so over the moon about it, you wouldn't believe it. It was so good to get into the A final properly. And I've done it every week since. The car is so much better. It'd probably be better with this again. But, yeah, it's fine at the moment, it doesn't matter. I do have another body on order from Shark Fat, the same guy who did this. I'm going to get him to paint a new race livery, albeit an original one that he and I have sort of come up with, so not like a Castrol, for example, but it will be on one of these because I really like the shape of this car, really like it, and it looks fantastic. And no one else uses one. People use these, people use the other bitty design, which I can't remember the name of, but this one, yeah, this one looks really good. I'm not using this one, partially because it's a bit, although that one's beat up too, but you know, yeah, it's a bit of a shame. It's kind of dented in and stuff. The angles have sort of been squashed in a little bit. But also, this was a poor choice of colour for racing on the carpet at our club. The carpet's a dark grey, and this gets kind of lost on it, and it's quite hard to see sometimes. And especially with other drivers don't see you coming. So it was a poor choice, but it looks good. Anyway, one of these, different paint scheme. You'll see it next year. That'll be good fun. The club is going great. It's going so well now. Yeah, I'm absolutely over the moon. The car's not. I'm still missing the last percentage compared to the top guys. You know, I'm still just a little bit consistently slower every lap, and I still make a few more mistakes than they do. But I'm getting there, and now I'm consistently either challenging for I say mid to lower, but lower mid A final slots or a top B final slots, which is basically where I was 17 years ago in the touring cars. But it took me 2 years to get to that point, whereas this has taken me 6 months. So I'm quite pleased. I am quite pleased. It's going really well. I have a new rival. I have a rival. His name's Steve. It's ridiculous. Ridiculous how close we are. I'll give you an example. The other week I knocked him out of the A finals. He got knocked down to the B final by 17/100ths of a second. And I don't mean over a lap. I mean over a 5-minute race. That was the difference between my car and his. 17/100ths of a second, right? On top of that, our top 10 lap average, so it takes your fastest 10 laps and averages them out, our top 10 lap average was identical down to the 100th of the second. It's ridiculous. It's crazy. And then on the Christmas, we had the Christmas event just there, which was a free event, and it was just fun. It wasn't for points or anything. He and I came joint second overall, because of course we did. The same points. It's stupid, but it's great. I really enjoy it. And it's a good friendly rivalry. We have good banter and stuff, and sometimes he beats me, sometimes I beat him. It's just a good laugh. So yeah, I'm really enjoying it. There's the dog again. Talking of the Christmas thing, there was a Jingle Bells fun event where they had these metal gates up with jingle bells hanging down, and you had to drive under it and hit the bells with your car, but you couldn't hit the gate itself. People were using their GT12 cars. Somebody used a stock car, which was much slower and didn't handle as good, but whatever. I decided to use that mini pickup truck, 4-wheel drive, cheapo pinecone RC thing I got a few months ago. And I thought it was being clever. I put tyre additive on the tyres, the rubber tyres. Big mistake. I couldn't dry them. They wouldn't dry off. No matter how I tried, they just wouldn't dry off properly. So I put this card on the track with essentially greasy tyres, greasy rubber tyres, which, by the way, are worse than greasy foam tyres. And it was the worst thing you've ever seen. It was terrible. But everybody had a good time laughing at it, so that's fine. The club secretary told me I was so last, he didn't even bother timing it. But what made it worse was I had to put my transponder in it because the computer counted lap time, and then you got points marked against you or for you, depending on if you got through the gates. I had to take the transponder out of this, so I did disassemble the front of this because I've got it all sneaking on between the front suspension and everything, keep it nice and low. Oops. So I put it in the truck. This is over there, which is why I'm pointing over there. And it came loose and wrapped the cable around the front left wheel. So I had 3-wheel drive. I had a locked front left and a diff working overtime the other. So that wouldn't have helped. So yeah, it was a disaster, but it was fun. And overall the night, that was separate. So during the 4 races, like I said, Steve and I got equal seconds. We both won a bag of chocolate. And it was not a real legitimate A final because it's not for points, but it was again on the A, and I was 2 corners away from winning it. One of the faster guys, much faster than me, was catching me every lap on lap. And then the second last corner in the last lap, we were lapping 2 other people. One of them was Steve, and I'm not saying this might not have been accidental, but one of them was Steve, and he got involved with somebody else. And I got caught up in the accident, and the other guy got through, so I came second, so never mind. Anyway, that's how it's going. It's going really well. I'm really enjoying it. I hope you enjoyed the update. And the next question mark is, where will I finish in the overall championship? We'll find out. In the meantime, take care of yourselves. Thanks for watching. I'll see you later. Bye-bye.